We are like,
Good evening, everyone. I'm Vijay William, Chief Manager of OP Jindal Global University, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all for today's webinar, hosted by Jindal School of Design and Architecture. Today's session is on highly relevant and future-focused topic, AI 2.0 for UX, 7 growth skills for serious professionals. As AI continues to reshape industries globally, the field of user experience is also evolving rapidly. The role of UX professionals today is no longer limited to interface design alone. Organizations are now looking for designers who can think strategically, work alongside AI systems, solve complex user problems, and lead innovation in digital experiences. So, before we begin the session, I would like to briefly talk about the vision behind the MDES in UX program at OP Jindal Global University. Saurabh, if you can help me with the slide one. Yep. At JGU, we strongly believe that design education should stay ahead of industry transformation rather than trying to catch up with it. One of the biggest challenges in higher education today is the gap between the industry expectation and traditional academia curricula. What makes JGU unique is our ability to bridge this gap through innovation and global collaboration. As many of you know, OP Jindal Global University has been recognized as an institution of eminence by the Government of India, a distinction given to only a selected few universities in the country. In addition to this, JGU has also been ranked among the leading institutions globally and continues to build programs that are future oriented, industry aligned, and globally relevant. Next slide. To build a truly world class UX program, JGU partnered up with Career Reactor, a division of UX Reactor, bringing global industry expertise directly into the classroom. And today, we are honored to have with us one of the key visionaries behind this initiative, Professor Prasad Kandamani. Professor Prasad is a professor of practice at OP Jindal Global University and the founder of UX Reactor, or also known as Career Reactor. With over 25 years of work experience, he has built and mentored high-performing UI UX teams across global organizations. His contribution to the UI UX industries are remarkable, including designing the search assistance feature that is now used by millions of internet users worldwide. He has also worked with renowned global companies such as LinkedIn, VMware, Yahoo, Honeywell, and also many others. And additionally, to add to his portfolio, he is a Harvard Business School alumnus and holds multiple patents and publication in the field of design and innovation. We are truly excited to learn from his insights today as he speaks about the evolving role of AI in UX and critical growth skills professional needs to stay ahead in this rapidly changing landscape. So please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Prasad Kandamani for today's session. Over to you, Professor Prasad.
Thank you, Vijay, and good evening to all of you. My intention today is to have more of a conversation and kind of talk through what are the skills that are required to grow and evolve. I'm sure you've all heard of this phrase that is coming out, which is called the K-shaped economy. They're saying, there's a new economy that's happening, a K-shaped economy where people who are capable have amazing opportunities, whereas the people who haven't had the chance to build that capability continue to struggle. And so the career paths for both of these kinds of roles are defined purely by capability and they diverge very, very fast. So, today I'm going to talk about the skills that are required to succeed in this work environment and also talk about, answer any questions that you might have. So let's go on to the next slide. And I want to quickly give you, an example of an experiment that we've done. So what we do every year as part of our master's degree program is we have 9 days of contact time. So where everybody comes from all around the country, they hang out with us and we take a problem that we believe is impossible, right? And we work to solve it. Now, a student body is we had about 45 designers. About 57% of those people have more than 5 years of experience. And again, the kind of companies range all the way from, the top brands that you see all around to, there's some of the smaller startups as well, right? So there's a whole spectrum of it. But again, everybody is capable, everybody is motivated and excited. So what we did with all these guys when they came onto the campus was we did this. Let's go on the next one. We tied up with A-Star, which is part of the government of Singapore, and it runs their bioinformatics data set. In fact, they were one of the nodal agencies that managed the whole COVID-19 pandemic response for pretty much every country in the world. And what we told them was, you have 9 days to save $10 million. Well, sorry, 10 million lives. What does that mean? It means that in 9 days, earlier what used to happen is when a virus is found, it would take 60 days after that to create a vaccine. So the point is, can you predict which virus is going to become big before it becomes big? And if you can do that, now you have more time to save lives. And so that was the challenge we gave. We said, use the AI however you want to use it. You have 9 days to save 10 million lives. Now design a solution for us. Okay. So I want you guys to look at this problem. Okay. So we got 45 of some of the smartest designers from all around the country, gave them this challenge, told them you can use whatever AI you want, right? And this solution would be implemented by A-Star. Okay. So what do you think happened? So I just love for you to kind of think about it and just put it in your chat. Do we have a poll, Saurabh?
No, Prasad, we'll take the
Okay.
answers in the
Yeah, so just put it on your chat. Just take a shot and what do you think happened? Do you think people succeeded? Do you think people didn't succeed? What kinds of interesting things would we have seen? Just feel free to type it in. All right. So Ali basically says the team succeeded. All right. Did all the teams succeed or did some of the teams succeed? There were 9 teams. All right. All of the teams succeeded. Okay. Do you think that the A-Star team liked what came out of the solution? Okay. Interesting. So Ali says maybe 50% of the people succeeded. A-Star did implement the solution. Okay. Maria says maybe no. All right. So here are some thoughts for you. Okay. So I'm gonna, what we did, and again, all of this is available on YouTube. You can watch these 9 days on YouTube as a web series so you can see what happened. But I'm going to go through some of the key highlights. So let's go on to the next slide. So we realized some universal truths. There were things that people succeeded at, there were things that people failed at. On average, every team restarted their project at least 3 times. They started their project from zero all the way again and then restarted it 3 times before they were able to ship a product in 9 days. And pretty much everybody shipped. So the teams that struggled, why did they struggle? They struggled because the first thing, as soon as they got the problem statement, they talked to the client, they said, okay, let's go execute it. They just started, banging out designs and code and stuff like that. The teams that actually did not struggle said, we are not going to touch the computer. We're going to actually sit down and talk to each other. We're going to say, what are you good at? What am I good at? What are your interests? What are my interests? So they all took the time to understand each other. Let's go on to the next slide. Now, this was interesting. So the teams that struggled, that had to repeat their work multiple times, What they did was they literally took the video recordings from the client calls, submitted to ChatGPT or whatever AI they were working with, and said, "Hey, now can you create a summary of what was talked about?" And they said, "Now can you create a PRD from the product?" And then from the PRD, they said, "Okay, let's start generating the screens." They generated all the screens, and they said, "All right, time to go party. Let's go, have fun." Went home, right? And then the next day or 2 days later, when the client came, like, this was not what I was expecting. This was completely different from what I told you. And they're like, what? Like, how did this happen? So they did all the work in a matter of 24 hours, but it was completely wrong. The teams that did well, again, did not take time to touch the AI. They sat down and tried to understand the problem. They understood the system in which the solution was going to work. And then they took the time to understand the strategy. How am I going to roll out the product? What elements do we need to talk about? And how we're going to build it. So there was a strategy component for the teams that succeeded. Let's go on to the next one. Right? Now, again, the teams that struggled were basically the ones that were looking at LinkedIn and YouTube and all that. It's like, oh, here's the one AI that is going to solve all your problems. So they took that AI. Obviously, they tried to do all the tasks with it. Did not work because they didn't really understand what that AI was good for and what problem they wanted solved. And so it didn't necessarily work out. The teams that did really well took the time to look at all the tools that were available to them. And then once they understood the tools, then they said, okay, what task can I give to what tool and how do I orchestrate and plan these tools together? Again, it had nothing to do with using AI. It had something to do with thinking about how am I going to use AI? What is my problem and how am I going to solve it, right? It was a very strategic approach towards understanding what was available. Let's go on to the next slide. And then this was one where uh, they said, okay, so the teams that didn't really do well thought in terms of screens. Okay, I have to create an application with 5 screens or 6 screens. This is what it's going to be because at some point the client said, oh, we just want these 6 screens. And if we did these 6 screens, we imagine that the problem would be solved. And then they said, oh, we just have to do these 6 screens. Let's just generate those 6 screens and give it. So they were looking at it from a very checklist perspective. Whereas the teams that did really well said, okay, the client said 6 teams, let's put that aside. Let's also try to understand what is the problem that the client is trying to solve, right? Then they spent time understanding the problem. They realized the problem wasn't just creating a UI, they were political problems. Again, think about an organization that is, managing the global pandemic, right? So every government in the world is coordinating with this organization. So clearly there are going to be sensitivities, governmental sensitivities. There are going to be politics that are going to be involved. Different countries are blaming different other countries. So all of these things were never encapsulated in what the client told us. You had to sit down and understand the problem, and once you know exactly the environment in which your problem, in which your solution is going to live, you can come up with a better solution. So the teams that succeeded took the time to understand the problem and clarify why that problem, how that problem played out in the environment that the solution is going to be created. All right. Let's go on to the next one. All right. Now, this was interesting. And in fact, the addition of AI caused more problems than not having AI at all. Because the moment we had AI, everybody had opinions. The AI also had opinions. It was almost like you increase the size of the team and everybody now has opinions, but you don't know how to resolve that opinion. You don't know which opinion is correct or wrong. And we also have an inherent bias where we think, okay, so if it's AI giving something, then it's probably correct because it might have some information that I don't have. Okay. And so the teams that struggled were not able to put checks and balances for each other. They were not able to decide which solution was better, why it was better. And so they spent more time thinking. They weren't even sure at the end of the day when we asked them, did you create a solution that worked? They weren't sure if they solved the problem. Whereas the teams that did really, really well spent time understanding the problem, they aligned with each other, they had clear rubrics of what was good, what was bad. And so they were managing the AI to get the job done rather than make an AI an equal in that room to get the job done. So again, fundamental differences in how some teams succeeded and some teams failed. Now, this we see it's not just what we've seen within our experiment, right? This is exactly what we see across all the companies that we collaborate with and engage with. And in fact, we have regular meetings with that's one of the benefits because I'm out in the US. I get to interact a lot with my ex-colleagues from in California and the Bay Area, and I get to hear what's going on at their offices. Turns out, there's an insane metric that I heard: 90% of all AI initiatives in companies fail. And the reason is exactly the same thing. Everybody expects a magical solution to come up. Nobody focuses on the core elements, and that's why it fails. And again, so companies are realizing this. And everybody's saying, now, how do we fix it? So that is where, when we start talking about our career and how we build our career, we need to kind of connect both of these dots. So let's go on to the next slide. So the question that all of you asked, did they succeed? Absolutely, right? In fact, the amazing thing was every team succeeded, right? The client basically said, dude, we look at these solutions and these are definitely what we can work with. And the last thing we heard was they had actually gone out and hired a designer out in Singapore who could now take these solutions to the next level, which is amazing, which is probably one of the best outcomes. And incredibly proud of the team. But there's always a but here. Let's go on to the next slide. When we looked at all the solutions side by side, right, every solution, there was like maximum of 15% difference between the worst and the best. Okay. So all the solutions were average. Now, in this case, we had one client, 9 teams working, so the client was happy. What if they were working for 9 companies that were trying to solve the same problem, but everybody came up with the same solution? All 9 companies would have failed. Right? And that was a very interesting realization for us, is AI helps us get to the job really fast. But if you don't know how to use the tool, everybody is going to come out with an average solution. And so how do you compete in a market where everything is average? So now let's go on to the next slide. What I want to talk about, and again, we are going to share the link in the chat for the impossible design problem, the impossible design challenge that's on LinkedIn if you're curious to learn it. And we've kind of documented what happened day in day, every day. And that's pretty much what happens in any project. So let's go on to the next slide. So the question is now, how does this impact our career and what skills do we learn? And so there is a pyramid of skills that need to be thought through and executed upon. Right? The basic level that you need to have is you need to be able to communicate to an AI what you want. What does that mean? You need to be able to understand what is the context of the problem, who is the audience, what is the problem you're trying to solve. You need to be able to write your instructions very clearly so that the AI is able to understand without ambiguity. Okay. Now, how do you get these skills? So that's one aspect, right? So then let's actually look at the next part. Right? The next set of skills are learning to manage the system. Okay, the first is you have explained what you wanted. Now you need to manage the system, which is, well, am I getting the output I want? Is this the correct output? Is this accurate? So you are actually sitting there and correcting and defining the vision for what you want out of the system. Then you're also saying, well, has the problem been broken down appropriately? And then am I chaining the appropriate tools to get to the output that I want? And if I have a failure, where is the failure happening? So that is the second level of skill that you need to have, which is managing the system that is helping you build all of these artifacts. Now, the third level of skills that you need to think about is managing the outcomes. Right? Now, think about this from a perspective of well, I'm going to talk about it afterwards, but in managing the outcomes, you're thinking about the system level. Okay, so what is the larger system I'm creating? What is this component that is going to fit as part of this larger system? And how will it play out? What impact will it have across the board? That's one aspect. understanding how you're going to play with the agent architectures. Now, if you're using agents to develop your solution, or you're using agents to deploy as a solution itself, right? Which is you're using it to speed up your work, or you're using it to speed up your customers' work, right? In both of these cases, you need to understand the trade-offs that happen. What are these architectures? Which trade-off? How am I going to use it? And how am I going to set expectations to my users? So there needs to be a deeper level thought for that. And finally, it is about governing. You need to be thinking about the cost structures for all of these elements of whatever solution you're creating. When you're able to manage those outcomes, that is when you truly have a very, very strong career path. Let's go on to the next slide. And I'm going to jump into some of these examples. So for example, level one, and this is stuff that you've seen on LinkedIn across the board. People say, hey, I've got this library of prompts that are solving it, and everybody's giving you libraries and libraries, right? Now, which is great. In the short term, you can take that library very quickly, plug it in, get your answer, right? But the question is, unless you understand why that library is written the way it is, you will never learn how to articulate your problem, right? And so that is one aspect that you need to think about, right? Which is, how do you use all of these libraries to create a better understanding of how to engage with the AI tool, right? That's one aspect. The other thing that you also need to be thinking about is, if there are so many libraries, it is only a matter of time before this task is automated. So communication then becomes strategic rather than a tactical thing. Like, should I put in certain keywords, or should I put a strategic thought process in place? So that is the level one, which is the fundamental, is like, how do you approach communication? What is your contribution to it, and what is the system's contribution to the communication? This is something you need to be able to understand as a foundation. Let's go on to the next slide. Now, the second aspect is managing the system. So, for example, you're saying, listen, I want to design a screen. The requirement is I want to design a screen for a manager who reviews a number of pending requests. And then there are different types of requests. So you must use the existing system. So how would you do it? So this is where, when you're managing the system, you need to be able to look at the task, break it down into smaller tasks, rather than just give the whole thing to the AI and tell the AI, like, generate something, in which case you have no control over what is happening. So if you are able to break it into smaller tasks, you are now able to get the system to succeed at each one of those tasks, and you are also able to audit if something goes wrong. All right. Now, once you've broken the task into smaller parts, the next skill that you need to learn is, now, how would you deploy it, right? So what are the set of tools that you're going to use? So let's go on to the next one. So this is where again, to solve any problem, there are multiple ways you can solve it. Think of it as Legos. There are multiple tools that are good for different things. Now, how are you going to put those Legos together to get what you want? Okay. And this is where, again, at a very high level, you could say, I'm just going to go into Claude and just develop it, which is great because you can generate the code, but it takes time. And at the end of the day, you can only evaluate so many solutions at a time. And so it slows you down. There's no visual ideation in the game. It's just code. You got the code, and now you move in from there. Right? Well, you say, no, I want to iterate on my screens. So then the next step is, okay, you're going to do Claude plus Stitch. Okay. So where you're doing some level of iteration. But again, the challenge here is, if you want to apply a design system, you're working for a company that has a design system, a standard, you cannot apply that standard. It's hard to do that. So then you say, okay, well, I have a problem. Then there's a third approach to it, where you say, okay, now I can use Figma MCP, and then I'm using Claude and Stitch, so I'm able to play around with this. So again, the point is, there's no one flow that is perfect, but it's important for you to understand, well, what is it that I want to do? What are the trade-offs I'm willing to live with, and what are the trade-offs I don't want? And then based on that, you're stitching those tools together to get the output that you want. So this is a part that requires a lot of thinking and deliberate action. Let's go on to the next slide. Now, the third part is actually much, much more abstract, right? So as we go about from the bottom all the way to the top, you're getting through the more abstract ways of thinking. Okay. Now, and this is where the big money is. Okay. So let us say there was a change in the requirement. Well, where are you going to change it? What are the changes that need to be done at different parts of the tool system that you've created, right? So, okay, does Claude need to change some requirements? Does Google Stitch need to change? Does something need to change on Figma? Does something need to change on the design system? So you're actually now have that system view and you're saying, okay, a change has come. How do I now manage everything I have to get the outcome I want? Okay. And again, keep in mind, you know, companies don't hire people to manage processes. They hire people to drive an outcome, which is either I want to retain my customers, I want to make more money, or I want to get new customers, whatever it is that the goal is, companies are hiring you for that perspective. And so now we're thinking in order to get to that outcome, how do I orchestrate all the different tools that I have and what changes do I need to make at what point to be able to get that outcome? So that is a much more system level thinking. Now, another skill that you need to think about is different kinds of agent architectures. Now, I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it, but again, think about it as, don't get too bogged down into these diagrams. Just think about every box as a person. Okay. So if you had to come up with the best solution and time was not a problem, what might you do? You might have 4 or 5 advisors and you might ask each of them the same question. You'll get an answer and then you will try to then synthesize the best points from everybody and then you basically give out a solution. Okay. So that is one way of doing it. But let us say that time was really important. You don't have time to have a group of advisors to do it, in which case you want to do a more linear process. So it is understanding what it is that you want, what are the constraints in which your customer might expect a solution in a minute versus 10 minutes. Okay. So then what is the structure you want to do and how are you going to set up these structures to be able to get your outcome? And this is where there's a lot more collaboration going on with your engineering counterparts. Okay. Now, there's one more change that is happening, and why I'll tell you, Prasad, I'm a designer. Why are you talking to me about agents and agent architectures and stuff? And so my argument is this. What I've seen, that the top one of, I've gone to like a bunch of companies and I've seen how they're implementing AI. There's one company that all of you are aware of. They used to have a team of 20 designers. Literally what they did was they laid off 19 designers and they made the product manager use AI to generate the screens. And then these screens are then given to the designer and they say, okay, now you can either approve it or fix it. Okay. So now the designer is already getting a screen, they're approving or fixing it. That's one way of doing it. A second approach is this other company. Again, it's a top 50 company that all of you would know if I told you the name. What they're doing is, what this other company is doing is they said, you know what, we need people who have a more system thinking. So what they said was, we're going to pair one designer with one engineer. So they actually hired more designers. And they said, okay, now because they said we need to get more ideas done in unit time. And they said one designer and one engineer and now go execute. And so again, clearly, most companies are still trying to find out what is the best way to work with, build teams when AI is in the mix. But the point I'm trying to make here is there are fewer and fewer people expected to work with bigger and more complex systems. Okay. So what used to be done with teams of 15 or 20 people is now being done in teams of 3 or 4 people. And so it is very important for a designer not only to know their job, but also to understand the trade-offs that their engineer counterpart or their product management counterpart or their sales and marketing counterparts are doing. Okay. And that is fundamentally a significant shift that we need to think, which is why I say you need to think about managing the outcome. When you have big teams, you say, okay, my job is to make research or do an interaction design or whatever. But when you have small teams, you're accountable for the outcome because your management team is going to say, how many users did you get for me today? That's the answer you need to give. It's not about, I did research or I did this, I did that. Nobody cares about it anymore, right? What they care about is, did you drive the outcome? So that is where the managing outcomes component comes in. Let's go on to the next slide. This this one is also interesting. Now, when you use AI, AI is in fact one of those tools that will drink money like water, right? And it actually drinks water as well. So it like has made whole, cities dry because of the amount of cooling requirements. But that's a different issue. So here's a simple problem that, AT&T is a huge telecommunications giant in the US. They said, let's create a chatbot. They created a chatbot and suddenly realized that that chatbot is using 8 billion tokens a day. That is a lot of money for chat, right? And so what they do is now, again, this is where companies also struggle because when you're spending so much in AI, you have to go to the stock market and somehow say that you're making a profit. The challenge that comes is you have to cut that somewhere. So that is where the layoffs are happening. Okay. Now, what this company did was they actually said, no, let's actually put a team together to understand how we can reduce the cost. And they realized certain tasks, and this is where the agent orchestration comes in. They realized certain tasks can be done by agents using cheaper LLMs, and certain tasks need more expensive LLMs. Okay. And the moment they realized that, they were able to reduce the cost of their tool by 90%. Now, turns out all of us have to be thinking about it. This is going to be a natural state of thought for us because any solution you drive could immediately rack up like millions of dollars of bills. And where are those millions of dollars going to come from? Somebody's going to lose their job, or you're going to start thinking about how you're going to optimize for it. So this is where you're managing for outcomes. Okay, you're not just saying I'm doing research or I'm doing XYZ, but rather you're saying how am I driving the company's outcomes. So this is the next part. Now let's go on to the next slide. So when you look at the skill progression, right? Level 1, which is cutting and pasting from ChatGPT or whatever, or LinkedIn, getting your prompts and stuff, those days are gone, right? And that is not going to pay you much. That is like the bottom of the rung kind of jobs, right? What you need to be thinking is you need to be thinking, how do I manage outcomes? Because if you learn to manage the outcomes, you become indispensable to any company that you're interviewing with or you're working with because they understand that you're creating value for the company. Okay? If you're managing the system, that's okay, that's good. You are able to deliver outcomes, deliver products fast, but is it driving the outcome? The company doesn't know, right? And so that is a fundamental difference that you need to think about is where do you want to be and how do you want to be? Now let's go on to the next slide. So the next question that I would imagine all of you are thinking is great. You told me all this theory. Now I'm excited to learn what do I need to do to kind of get going. So I'm gonna, again, we don't have a lot of solution, but I can share with you what we do as part of our program so you can apply it for yourself. There's different ways that you can approach it. So let's go on to the next slide. So let's go to the next one. Yeah, you just keep going to the next one. So until this slide displays. Okay. So the most common way that we all learn is we look at it in terms of knowledge and application. Like I watch a YouTube video or I do something online. I've got some piece of knowledge and then I'm applying it. I'm answering certain questions or I'm doing a quiz or I'm doing some kind of an activity and that's done. So I can say I got a certificate. I know what to do. Well, it turns out that doesn't directly convert because again, go back to, our experiment. Most of these guys have been working professionals with like at least 3.5 years to, 12 years of experience. And they come into this and they still fail, right? The reason we fail is, okay, you've learned the theory, but when you're put under pressure, we always go back to our old habits. And our old habits do not help us succeed in this case. Okay. So what we need to do is whatever you've learned, you need to learn to execute with that. You need to learn the workplace skills because your skills are different. Earlier, you used to be working in a team of 20 people. Now you're working in a team of 3 people. So the workplace skill changes, the way you communicate changes, the way you lead teams or engage with everybody changes. So all of these other skills have to be built at the same time. You can't be a gymnast with like insanely strong legs but very weak hands, in which case you're only able to do like, jumping, nothing else, right? And so what you need to be thinking is you need to build yourself in a much more holistic perspective, which is you need to learn to execute, you need to have the appropriate workplace skills, and you need to have the leadership skills to drive your vision. And unless these skills are not done, it becomes really, really hard to apply what you've learned at your work. Let's go on to the next slide. So some of the things that we do, right? One of the things that we do is we say, okay, how do you create a real world environment? We say you work with a startup and you only work for 1 month. So these are what we call apprenticeships. So there's, you do one apprenticeship in every semester, and you have 4 weeks, and you have to ship the product with them. And it's a startup for a specific reason, because startups are really busy. They don't know if they're going to survive a month from now. So they're going to tell you to your face that you're full of BS if you're not able to do the work. And so it is a very clear upfront communication, which is don't waste my time, let's get the job done. And so if you're able to work in that environment, you are now what you call battle tested. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Right? Now, this is interesting. So when I went to Harvard, we had acting coaches. And I'm like, dude, I'm here for a business course or business degree, and you're teaching me acting. Until, one of the professors explained to me, just think about it, if you are at work and you have to be effective, you have to communicate with your team members who are reporting to you. You have to communicate to your cross-functional peers around you. You have to communicate to your bosses and other people within the organization about what you're doing and why you're doing. And so unless you learn how to communicate effectively, how do you succeed? Right? And so what we've done as part of the program, I think this is probably the only design program that has acting classes. But, again, the intention is how do you groom people into positions of leadership? So you have to learn to communicate. You have to learn to deliver what you're thinking in your head. You might have a great idea in your head, but unless you communicate it, it's going to have no value. So think about going and standing up and delivering every day. When you do that day in and day out, you get really good at communication and articulating your thought process. Right? Let's go on to the next slide. Now, this is the other part. Okay, even after they do their apprenticeships, people still struggled when they came in for the 9-day on-campus component. The reason is, again, what used to be done in 1 month is now reduced to 9 days. Right? The magnitude of this problem is really big, and you have a client that says, I'm going to use it if you can. So there's a real cost of not being able to do it, and there's an opportunity for being able to solve the problem. You get the credit for doing it. So now when you start looking at it, this is where now again you go back into your old habits, and again you need to learn how not to get into your old habits, right? You also need to learn how to communicate with people that are spread around the world, because today talent is not based in the US or Europe or India or wherever, right? You're going to be collaborating around the world. So you need to be able to communicate that effectively in terms of what you're thinking and why you're thinking that. So that is where the crucible of execution comes in. So notice it doesn't matter how much theory you've learned. What matters is what you are able to execute under that pressure, right? Let's go on to the next one. Now, you've done amazing stuff, you've done great stuff, but nobody's going to know who you are. So one of the other things I also tell all of my students is focus on building your brand, a genuine brand. Don't use ChatGPT and stuff to create like a lot of nonsense text, because people are now becoming savvy to understand like, yeah, this person knows something or doesn't know something. So spend the time to build your brand, because, again, this is one of the pieces of advice that I give to people. The first job that you get should be because you applied for it, right? But after that, every other job you should get should be because somebody knows you, right? Somebody referred you to that position. Oh, I know this guy, you need to talk to this person. So that is how you build long-term careers. And that is what I would say is you need to spend some time focusing on building your brand. And that's what we tell all our students is like, build your brand. That's what is going to help you move forward. Let's go on to the next slide. So again, that's how you move from a theory-based learning approach to a much more industry-centric, practical-based learning approach. And that's how you need to be thinking about how you're going to learn all of these concepts that we've talked about. Now, one other thing, if you can go on to the next one. Yeah. So again, we are going to be doing these events on a monthly basis. Every month, we are going to be talking about stuff that is much more relevant and stuff. And then we obviously want you to kind of also tell us what you want as part of these sessions. But again, please join the WhatsApp group. You're welcome to join this. And the next month, we are going to be talking about really how should you plan your career, because fortunately, unfortunately, everybody talks about the theory of it, but nobody tells you like, okay, what should you plan for in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? How do you grow? What are your visions? So I think we are going to be spending some time next month to be talking about it. But again, join the WhatsApp group so we can, keep you updated and we can keep engaging on that. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So any questions? Happy to take your questions and then happy to, address any doubts you might have. Oh, by the way, could we also share the link for the YouTube channel so people can check it if they want, if they're interested?
Sure.
So I guess Sani is asking a question, which is, can we have the copy of the presentation slide? This whole presentation will be made available on YouTube. And once we make it available, we'll share it on the WhatsApp group so you can access it and, view it as many times as you want.
So I think until people are typing their questions, we can cover the one more slide that's there.
Sure.
Yeah. Vijay, you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So, yep. Thank you so much, Prasad. I think it was a very insightful and future-focused session. I'm sure everyone joining us today has gained valuable perspectives and on how AI is transforming the UX landscape, and also the kind of skills professionals must build to stay relevant and competitive in years ahead. So going ahead with this particular webinar, I would like to tell that what makes this conversation even more important is that the future of UX will belong to professionals who can combine creativity, user empathy, strategy, and AI-driven thinking. And that is exactly the philosophy behind our program, which is Masters of Design and UI UX plus AI at OP Jindal Global University. I would like to tell you that this is not just a traditional design degree where you guys come and get a master's degree just on your portfolio or degree. The program has been carefully designed in collaboration with global industry experts from Career Reactor, UXR Reactor to prepare learners for the real world product ecosystems and also design environments. So, from a perspective of UX research, product thinking, interaction design, and design systems, I would like to tell you the upcoming cohort is scheduled to begin in September 2026. And for those who are serious about building a meaningful career in UX and AI enabled design leadership, this program offers a very unique opportunity to learn directly from global practitioners and industry mentors. I would really like to encourage everyone interested to connect with our team to learn more about the curriculum, career pathways, and the admission process. I would be dropping a link of the website right now in the chat. Please visit. I can see a few members who's already touched with my team, Mr. Mohit, Ms. Parul, and as well as Mr. Karun. I think the process is very simple. You guys submit your application. You guys, have a review of your SOP, and then there would be a interaction and interview of what value exactly you guys would be adding for the degree. And if everything goes well, yes, you would be selected for this particular degree. And once again, I think I would like to thank Prasad and I would like to thank everyone who joined us today. We truly appreciate your time and participation. And I think you guys have a wonderful evening ahead. I think now we can move
Wait,
to
wait,
the
wait. We didn't
webinar.
give people the opportunity to do their questions.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Now we can move to the Q and A because few people just want
Okay.
to, like wait for this queue, and people who
Yeah.
wants to ask questions they want to stay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Happy to answer any question. And again, for me, I enjoy teaching. I love teaching. So I want to make sure that you don't walk away with any doubts. And, happy to have that conversation.
So guys, you can put in your questions in the Q&A section, or if you want to talk, you can also raise your hand so we can help you unmute. So Prasad, there is one question from Campbell saying
Mhm.
they failed relying too much. Why did they fail? Was it because of relying too much on AI? Is one question there.
They failed for multiple reasons, right? But the biggest issue was when you use a tool without understanding what you want. If you don't know what you want, how are you going to be able to use a tool, right? I mean, that's the difference between a craftsman and somebody who's just like using a hammer, right? So I mean, if you use a hammer, doesn't mean that you are an artist, right? So the point is, you need to have a vision of what you want, what it should look like, what are the metrics and all that. Once you have that understanding, when you start using AI, you become much more effective. When you don't have that understanding, then everything looks logical. It makes sense, but you don't know what is wrong with it.
I think I have a question asked. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think Prasad, if you can answer, what skills should a fresher UI UX designer focus to get hired in 2026?
I think fundamentally there's two things, right, that I see. Um, Number one, the days of simulated projects are gone. You know, you need to have a body of work because companies are looking like, we work really fast. We're going to get work done in days that used to take months or years before. And so when you're working that fast, it's very hard to mentor a fresh person that is coming onto your team. So number one, they're looking to see, do you understand how to leverage AI? Are you able to keep up with the pace? Right? That's the most important thing that people are looking at, right? The second aspect is one of the ways that they look at it is they look at your projects, right? What work have you done? What industry component? What are the social dynamics that you have dealt with, right? And again, that is something that people will be asking questions around, right? How do you know you created the right solution? In fact, what I tell people is whenever you talk about what you've done, you should just use a 4-point formula, right? Which is, what is the problem I solved? Why do I think it's a problem? How did I solve it? And how do I know I solved it? You know, and if you're able to articulate yourself in that context where you're defining the problems from, people, process, environment, as well as the user, right? You're talking about all of that and you're able to do that, then you have a very strong opportunity for yourself. Right? But again, it's really about knowing how to ship in a team that is working very, very fast.
Cool. The next question, Prasad, is roles are merging, but between PM and engineering, which is that I need to prioritize to be able to to stay relevant.
See, I think the merging is happening. That is for sure, right? Earlier, when you used to have like you're talking about a 10% overlap, now you're talking like a 50-60% overlap. Okay. So the roles are moving very fast. In fact, one of our instructors in our program is the director of AI design and AI at one of the top companies out in Europe. And what she says is the way it is working, you literally are paired with one. In fact, the product manager is also kind of being transitioned out. In fact, their role has become much more diffuse, but it's engineers and there were four designers, one engineer paired together, and then one product manager managing multiple projects. Okay. And so literally every designer was designing stuff. They were working with engineer. They were prototyping stuff and the engineer was debugging the prototypes for them, right? So think about like having 5 different prototypes coming out in unit time. Okay. So the idea that is there is yes, they're merging, but now you have to get really good at your discipline. That means, you know, given a product, like one of the basic skills that now that has come back is you're going to be given a screen, very quickly look at it and tell what is wrong with it. Can you identify the 50 mistakes that are in there? How do I fix it? How do I improve it? A product manager would not know that. An engineer would not know that. Now, if you were an engineer, you're going to get a bunch of code. Now, very quickly fix that code, right? A designer would not know that. A product manager would not know that, right? So again, the idea is, yes, there are going to be overlaps, but your focus, your capability in your area, right, needs to improve to the point that you're very quickly able to look at what the outcome has been and tell what's wrong and how do you fix it, right? And that is what I would say. And again, you also need to know other parts. Like for example, in our course, we have case studies where we have to do financial modeling, right? So if you have to work with a product manager, you have to know the finances, right? We have a case study where you have to ship a product and you have to think about the costing for it. So you have to do that. So again, you do have to have some knowledge about what other disciplines are doing, but you also need to get really good at what you're doing. So I think those are the things that I would say you need to be focused on. And let me just ask this question again. Did I answer your question? Right. Just type in yes or no, and that's going to be good. Okay. Now, yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So the person says yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay. The next question is, what is the qualification required for obtaining scholarship for this program?
Okay. Good question. Um, okay, this is how I approach the scholarship point, right? When I bring someone on into my classroom, okay, there is a very clear understanding of 33% of the teaching, what you learn will likely come from our classes, right? The professor teaching you. They will do the theory, you will learn something from it. 33% you will learn when you do your assignments. But a majority of the learning that you will get is when you're interacting with your peers. So my number one criteria when I look at this is what value do you bring to the classroom, which is to your peers? What value do you bring to your peers? And what is it that you want to learn? Because you are a teacher as well as a student. Because if you talk about a classroom with, people having 10, 50% of the people have more than, 6 years of experience, people are going to be really smart. But the question is, what are you going to give? What are you going to teach to the people around you? And what are you going to learn from the people around you? You need to have a very good understanding of that. The next aspect that I'm also looking at is your body of work, which is what have you done, right? So, and it doesn't have to be within design. I mean, there's still at least 5 or 6% of the students that are non-designers that I still select because they've done some really phenomenal perspective, phenomenal work, and I appreciate the way they're thought through. Okay. So I am looking at your body of work. I'm looking at how do you think about solving problems? What problems have you solved? I'm also looking at your level of ambition. Do you have the ambition, the motivation? And also the other question that I have to ask of the teaching staff, right? All of us on the university side is, can we help make this person's career better than it was before they came to us, right? Can we accelerate this individual? So I think those are all the questions that we would probably be asking of ourselves as well as of you when we decide the scholarship question.
Okay. There are,
So, I just see one in the chat. I'm following the
yeah.
chat. So there's a question: is this course online or offline? So this course is blended. What that means is it is online, but you do have to come in for those 9 days, right? Where you will be given an impossible problem to solve, and you will learn how to solve it under those impossible conditions, right? So that is what I would say. And it's also, we also have students in different cities that actually coordinate with each other. So that's also something we would expect as you kind of approach the program.
Okay. Another question, Prasad, is many companies are reducing design teams and expecting designers to work faster using AI. In this situation, how should a UX designer position themselves to avoid becoming just a tool operator?
See, again, go back to the triangle, right? If you think about the triangle, there's the basic communication. If you're doing the basic communication, you're not doing strategy. I mean, um, uh, let me rephrase it, right? Okay. When I was a kid, I was hanging out with my dad, and he said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to earn a lot of money." So my dad says, "Okay, so how do you earn money?" And I say, I'm going to work really hard for it. So he looks at me and he looks at this one guy who's digging ditches. Okay. He said, "That guy must be a millionaire." Like, what do you mean? Like, he's digging ditches. He comes early in the morning, dig ditches all day, and then he goes home. So this guy is the hardest working person out there. So that guy must be a millionaire. Actually, no, that person is not a millionaire. And then I realized as you move up in your career, your ability to handle ambiguity increases. What that means, if you are working as a junior level person, okay, you're being told what to do and you have to make one screen or whatever, that's what you're doing. Minimum ambiguity. Okay. When you go to the next level, you're being told, okay, this is my intention. I want to create a product that will solve X, Y, and Z. Now, can you do that? Okay. So now you're basically doing the next level. There's a little bit unknown, but you're still developing the product. The highest level of ambiguity is, okay, how do I make $1 million? I don't know what problem I'm solving. I don't know, what solution I'm creating. I don't know where my customers are. Like, everything is unknown, right? So when you think about that spectrum, you see how people move up in their careers, right? The more ambiguity you can deal with, and the more effectively you can communicate that to your team members and get them aligned to you, the more you are able to move up in their career. Now let's apply the same framework for a design career. Okay. When you think from a design perspective, what you need to be doing is we can't be thinking at a screen level, right? We need to be thinking at an intent level and at a business level. Okay. We need to be learning to communicate. And one of the reasons why most designers don't get the credit they deserve, I mean, designers do a lot of work, but they don't get the credit because we are not able to talk about our thought process. We are not able to explain why something is important, why something is not important, right? We are not able to understand what does the other person want. So, for example, you know, somebody says, do this screen, and, okay, I'm going to do this screen, but that's one level. The second level is, okay, can you tell me why you're doing this screen now? Okay, so this idea will solve the problem, but here's another idea that might solve this problem better. Okay, so now you have a conversation with your team members so they see what unique value you bring to the table. So I think that's what you need to be thinking. Obviously, for sure, learn to work faster, learn to be more efficient within that environment. But the next level is learn to communicate in an appropriate manner, because even if you do fast work, you need to get the credit for your thought process. It's your thought process that an AI cannot duplicate, right? It's the manual work that can be duplicated. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. The next question is from Shanmukh. He's saying, I recently explored brand strategy, and through it, I realized just how useful it is for designing an application too. So, what are your thoughts on this? Does that brand strategy support developing a product designer's thought process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in fact, one of the concepts we teach is something called an experience roadmap. Okay. So an experience roadmap is, what is a brand strategy? Think about it, right? It is what people feel before they even use your product. They become aware of your product. In what context do they become aware of your product? What do they feel about your product, right? That's the first step. And then when you're thinking about design a product, what we say is, discover, which is where the brand strategy is really important. Then you say learn. So you want to learn more about this product. So that is the first time you're committing to it, which is where you need to have the consistency with what you're talking about in the beginning in terms of your brand strategy. Then once you learn more, then you say, okay, now try. Okay, I'm going to try your product. okay, which again needs to be consistent with what you're communicating. Then when you say, okay, now you say buy, in which case you're paid the money and you're using the product. So that's a way when you start buying it. Again, it needs to be consistent with the strategy, right? So, and then finally, after the use is done, your customer is now going and talking to 10 other people about their experience of working with your product. So if you think about it, what is connecting all of this is the brand strategy. So if I was to say, like, let's say that, on a call, if I was to say, like, listen, hey, I'm really smart and stuff like that. And then if tomorrow you saw a TikTok video of me doing dumb stuff, right? My brand is not related to what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And that is what it is. So product and brand strategy have to work in lockstep for it to work really, really well. And I think a really good example is Apple. They've been, especially under Steve Jobs, they were so good at creating a brand strategy and then kind of driving a product within that strategy. And that's what we need to be thinking. Like, brand strategy is always top of mind. Hopefully that answers your question.
Done with all the questions.
Awesome. So, is there anything else that we need to do, Saurabh?
We are done. Yes, Vijay, you can give the closing remarks.
Yep. I think once again, thank you, Prasad. It was a very insightful session. Thank you, Saurabh. It's been a great help. We truly appreciate your time and participation, and we hope to see many of you as a part of JGU Learning Community very soon. And have a wonderful evening ahead, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.